Let me guess. Sometime in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you sat down in a chair, let a stranger drape a cape over you, and made small talk about the weather while they held a very sharp object near your ear. And at the end, they spun you around to face the mirror, and you did the thing every single one of us does. You tilted your head about 15 degrees, squinted a little, and said, "Yeah, that's great. Even if it wasn't great, especially if it wasn't great." Then you paid. $40 maybe. You tipped on top of that, and you walked out and never thought about it again. But here's the thing I want to plant in your head before we go any further. There's a very good chance the person who just cut your hair does not actually work there. They're not an employee. They don't get a paycheck from that shop. In a lot of cases, they're paying the shop for the privilege of standing in that spot. And once you understand that one sentence, the entire economics of the American service business cracks wide open in front of you. I found this out the dumbest way possible. My barber's name is Dominic, Chicago, North Side. Been going to him for about 6 years now. And one day I'm sitting in his chair and I ask him something completely casual. Like, "Hey man, how's business? Is the shop doing okay?" And he laughs at me. Not a mean laugh. A "you sweet summer child" laugh. And he goes, "It's not my shop. I rent this chair." I said, "What do you mean you rent the chair?" He said, "$200 a week, cash or Zelle. I pay Ray on Mondays." $200 a week for a chair and a mirror and a little rolling cart with clippers on it. I do this for a living. I look at businesses all day, and I sat there in a cape with hair on my neck, realizing I had completely misunderstood a business I'd been walking into since I was in high school. So let's do Dominic's math first, because it's beautiful and how simple it is. Dominic charges $40 for a cut. He does somewhere between 10 and 14 a day, depending on the day. Call it 12. That's $480 in a day. He works 5 days. That's about $2,400 a week in service revenue. Then tips, which for a good barber with regulars runs anywhere from 15 to 25%, so call it another $400. He's collecting roughly $2,800 in a week. His costs? $200 to Ray, maybe $30 a week in blades, clipper oil, guards, capes, the powder, the little neck brush, some card processing fees on the guys who don't pay cash. And that's basically it. No rent, no utilities, no insurance on the building, no marketing budget. So Dominic is clearing something like $2,500 a week before taxes. That's north of $120,000 a year for a guy with a 2-year trade license and no student debt. Now hold on, because he's self-employed, so he's eating the full self-employment tax, he's buying his own health insurance, and if he doesn't work, he doesn't earn. There's no PTO. There's no 401 cake match. He got the flu 2 years ago and lost $1,100 in 4 days. But still, that is a very real income. And I want you to sit with the fact that most people walking past that shop assume he's a guy making $18 an hour. Okay, so now flip the camera around. What about Ray? Ray owns the shop. 6 chairs. Every chair rents for $200 a week. 6 times 200 is $1,200 a week. Walking in the door every single week, whether the barbers are busy or dead. That's about $62,000 a year in rental income. Ray's lease on the storefront is $3,200 a month, so call it $39,000 a year. Utilities, insurance, the water bill, the guy who fixes the barber chairs, the point of sale subscription, the sign out front, maybe $11,000 more. Ray's netting somewhere around $12,000 a year from renting chairs, which sounds like nothing, which is why Ray also cuts hair. He works 2 of those 6 chairs himself, so he's got his own book of clients on top of it. And this is where Ray said the thing that reorganized my brain. I asked him if he ever thought about hiring the barbers as employees instead, taking a bigger cut of each haircut. And he shook his head and said, "I'm not in the haircut business. I'm in the square footage business." That's it. That's the whole thing. Ray is a landlord. He signed 1 lease, and he subleases it in 6 pieces at a markup. He has converted an unpredictable, labor-intensive service business into something that behaves almost like a triple net commercial property. His revenue doesn't care whether it rains on Saturday. It doesn't care if Dominic gets the flu. He is arbitraging the spread between what he pays for 1,000 square feet and what 6 independent contractors will collectively pay him for the same 1,000 square feet cut into slices. And once you see it that way, you start noticing what he's actually selling. He's not selling a chair. He's selling foot traffic. He's selling the corner location, the parking, the sign, the reputation the shop has built over 20 years. A barber renting from Ray is paying for a customer flow he doesn't have to generate himself. Now here's the part where I have to complicate the beautiful story, because there's always a catch. That $1,200 a week only exists if all 6 chairs are full. Not full of customers, full of barbers. An empty chair earns Ray exactly $0, and it costs him the same rent as a full one. Fixed cost, perishable inventory. And that phrase should sound familiar if you've ever looked at an airline or a hotel. A seat on a flight that leaves empty is gone forever. You can't sell Tuesday's seat on Wednesday. Same thing here. A barbershop with 6 chairs open 10 hours a day has 60 chair hours to sell every single day. That's the actual inventory, not haircuts, chair hours. And they expire at close. Most shops run somewhere between 50 and 65% utilization across a full week, and that number is wildly lopsided. Dominic told me that Friday afternoon through Saturday evening is close to 40% of his entire week. Tuesday morning, he's on his phone. So the shop is basically a business that makes its money in about 30 hours and then treats the other 50 as overhead. Which brings me to my friend Marcus. Marcus is a project manager, good with money, always wanted to own something instead of just working for someone. About 3 years ago, he calls me up genuinely excited, and he says he found a barbershop for sale. Established shop, 12 years old, 6 chairs, all 6 rented. Asking price $145,000. Sellers saying it throws off about $55,000 in owner earnings. And on paper? That's not crazy. Small service businesses like this usually trade somewhere between 2 and 3 times sellers' discretionary earnings, so a shop netting $55,000 for $145,000 is right in the fairway. Marcus wants me to look at it. I say, sure, send me everything. So I ask him one question. I said, Marcus, do the barbers have contracts? Silence. I said, are they on written booth rental agreements with a term, with a notice period, with a non-solicitation clause? Or is it a handshake and $200 on Mondays? He checked. It was a handshake. All 6 of them. Month to month, and honestly, not even that formal. So think about what he was about to buy. He was about to pay $145,000 for a lease he didn't control, equipment worth maybe $15,000 used, and 6 people who could all walk out the following Tuesday and open up 2 blocks away. And they take every customer with them because, and this is the critical part in a barbershop, the client relationship belongs to the barber, not the shop. Nobody says, I'm going to raise. They say, I'm going to see Dominic. The goodwill has legs. It walks out the door at 6 o'clock every night, and you have to hope it comes back. Marcus didn't buy it. He renegotiated down to 95, the seller wouldn't move, and he walked. 18 months later, I heard 3 of those barbers left to open their own place. The shop's still there. It's got 2 chairs running now. And I've watched this happen up close. There was a kid at Ray's shop named Devin, 26, unbelievably good, huge on Instagram, before that was normal for barbers. Devin built a book of something like 240 regulars in 3 years. Then he left, rented a suite in one of those private studio buildings, raised his price from 40 to 65, and kept almost all of them. Ray lost 100% of that chair's revenue overnight and had to go find a new barber. And the new barber didn't come with 240 people. That's the fundamental fragility. Ray owns the room. Devin owned the reason people came to the room. All right, now let's walk about 4 doors down the strip mall, because there's a nail salon there, and I want you to understand something. It looks like the same business, same size storefront, same personal service. same tipping culture, same license from the same state board. Financially, it is almost the exact opposite business. And the difference is going to teach you more about how businesses actually work than most textbooks will. But before the numbers, I have to tell you where this industry came from because it's one of my favorite stories in American business and almost nobody knows it. In 1975, the actress Tippi Hedren, the woman from Hitchcock's The Birds, was volunteering at a refugee camp in Northern California called Hope Village, working with Vietnamese women who had just arrived after the fall of Saigon. She was trying to help them find work, and the women kept complimenting her fingernails. So she flew in her personal manicurist and set up training for 20 of them and helped them get into a beauty school so they could get licensed. 20 women. That's the seed. Today, depending on which survey you use, somewhere around half of all nail technicians in the United States are Vietnamese American. And in California, it's been estimated at closer to 70 or 80%. An entire multi-billion-dollar American industry, roughly 50,000 plus salons, traces a huge chunk of its origin to one afternoon and 20 women who liked somebody's manicure. I think about that constantly because everybody looks for the big structural explanation for why an industry exists, and sometimes the answer is that one person did one specific kind thing and it compounded for 50 years. Okay, numbers. I've got a friend, Lynn, who owns a salon in the suburbs. 10 pedicure chairs, 8 manicure stations. And when she first showed me her P&L, I actually said, wait, run that back. Because her labor cost was 58% of revenue. 58. Ray's labor cost is 0. 0. Ray does not have a labor line item because his barbers pay him. Why the difference? Because a nail salon mostly cannot run on booth rent. The service is different. A gel manicure is $35 to $55 and takes 45 minutes. A pedicure is $50 to $70 and takes an hour. A full set of acrylics with art can be $100 and up. But the customer usually wants both, and she wants them back to back. And she may want a tech for the hands and a tech for the feet at the same time. It's an assembly line. It requires coordination. It requires a front desk assigning people. You cannot have 8 independent contractors who all set their own hours and prices and still deliver that experience on a Saturday when 12 people walk in for a bridal party. So Lynn employs her techs. Usually some combination of a daily guarantee plus commission. Commissions in this industry commonly run somewhere in the 50 to 60% range of the service, and the tech keeps their tips. Which means Lynn is not a landlord. Lynn is a factory manager. Her profit comes from throughput. From how many services she can push through 18 stations before closing time, and from whether her techs are fast enough that a $50 pedicure takes 50 minutes instead of 70. And her fixed costs are brutal compared to a barbershop. A barbershop build-out is a lease, some chairs, mirrors, and a water line. Call it 50 to 150 grand for a nice one. A nail salon needs plumbing to every single pedicure station. Drainage, ventilation, because of the dust and the fumes and the chemicals you've smelled it, that's acrylic monomer and it's regulated. Pedicure spa chairs run a couple $1,000s each and up. Lynn's build-out was $190,000 before she sold a single manicure, and there's a piece of history buried in those chairs that most owners don't even know. In the year 2000, there was an outbreak in Watsonville, California. Over 100 women got serious skin infections, traced back to bacteria living in the screens behind Whirlpool footbath jets. Rare bacteria, ugly lesions, some of them lasted months. That single outbreak reshaped sanitation codes for the entire industry and is a big reason so many salons moved to pipeless, liner-based systems. So when Lynn spends $300 a week on disposable liners and disinfectant, that's not her being fussy. That is her insurance premium, her license, and her reputation all bundled into a plastic bag. Now, the thing that surprised me most about her business, I asked, aren't you terrified your best tech leaves and takes the clients, like what happens in barbershops? And she said no, because customers book with the salon, not the person. Roughly 7 out of 10 of her clients take whoever's open. Read that again. In a barbershop, the customer belongs to the barber. In a nail salon, the customer usually belongs to the salon, which is why Lynn's business is worth more than Ray's per dollar of profit. Her earnings transfer to a buyer. Ray's might not. Though there's an exception, and it lives in my own family. My sister-in-law, Tanya, has been going to the same woman, Mai, for 9 years. Gel fill every 3 weeks, roughly $70, plus a pedicure once a month. She's spending something like $1,400 a year, and she has followed Mai to 2 different salons. When I asked her why she doesn't just go somewhere closer, she looked at me like I'd suggested she switch families. She said, "Mai knows my nail beds." I have no counterargument to that. That is a moat. That's a stickier customer relationship than most SaaS companies have, and it costs nothing to acquire. Now let's talk taxes, because this is the part your CPA friend actually cares about. These are heavily tipped, historically cash-heavy businesses, and that cuts both directions. The upside came in July of 2025, when the One Big Beautiful Bill Act created a federal deduction for qualified tips up to $25,000 a year, available whether you itemize or not, running through 2028, phasing out above $150,000 of income, $300 for joint filers. And when Treasury and the IRS published the qualifying occupation list, barbers, cosmetologists, hairstylists, manicurists, and pedicurists were all on it. The final regulations landed in April of 2026. So for a barber like Dominic pulling 20 grand a year in tips, that's a genuinely meaningful change in take-home. The law also expanded the employer-side payroll tax credit on tips, the one restaurants have had for decades, to reach beauty service businesses. Talk to an actual accountant about your situation, but that's the landscape. The downside of a cash-heavy business shows up the day you try to sell it. If half your revenue never touched a bank account, you cannot prove it. And you cannot sell what you cannot prove. I've seen owners take a $200,000 haircut on an exit, no pun intended, but I'll take it because 10 years of underreporting made their real earnings invisible. Every dollar you hide today is a dollar you're discounting at your multiple later. Which is why my friend Kenny went a completely different direction. Kenny didn't want to be Ray, and he didn't want to be Lynn. He bought into a haircut franchise. $20,000 franchise fee, all-in investment somewhere in the low to mid 6 figures for the build-out, and a royalty and ad fund off the top of every ticket forever. In exchange, he got a name people recognize, an app with online check-in, a training system, and a hiring pipeline. His margins are thinner. His average ticket is way lower than Dominic's. But here's the thing Kenny understood that most people don't. He wasn't buying profit. He was buying transferability. He can own 4 of those. He cannot own 4 Dominics. So here's where all of this lands. 2 storefronts, 4 doors apart, that look like the same business to everybody who walks past. One is a real estate play dressed up as a barbershop. The other is a manufacturing operation dressed up as a nail salon. One has no labor cost and no ownership of the customer. The other has crushing labor cost and total ownership of the customer. Neither one is better. They're just different answers to the same question, which is the only question that matters in any small business. When the doors close at night, what part of this actually still belongs to you? Because the chairs, the mirrors, the sign, the lease, that's the part everybody counts. And it's the part that's worth the least. I asked Ray about this once. He's 62 now, been in that shop 21 years. I asked him what his plan was, whether he'd sell it. And he got quiet for a second and said, "Sell it to who? All I've got is a lease and 6 guys who don't have to stay." That's the whole lesson in one sentence, from a man who never took a finance class in his life. If this was useful to you, do me a favor. Hit subscribe, because I break down a business like this every single week. And next week, we're going into car washes, which have a margin profile that is going to genuinely make you angry. And drop a comment. What's a business on your street you've always wondered about? I read all of them. And honestly, that's where about half of these videos come from. I'll see you in the next one.